You are not lost at sea. The sea has found you. The first thing you notice is not fear, it's silence. Thick, heavy silence, broken only by the slow slap of water against the boat. No heroic waves, no cinematic storm, just calm. And that's worse, because calm lets you think. The sun beats down, not like fire, but like an idea fixed inside your skull. It dries your mouth, presses on your head, makes your thoughts sluggish. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. Every swallow feels like swallowing nothing. You look around, old wood, wet ropes, 4 bodies, too big for a boat too small. The shipwreck is over. That matters. The visible drama has ended. Now begins the one you cannot see. The water surrounding you is infinite. The water you can drink is not. Irony wants to make you laugh, but there's no energy for that. The sea always has that kind of humor. At first you speak little. No one wants to voice what everyone is thinking. There is no food, no water, no real plan. Only time. And here, time is not neutral. Time is a predator. Hours twist, days flatten, sun, thirst, silence, sun again. You start noticing small things, how the wood creaks when you shift, how the salt cracks your lips, how the ache grows in your stomach, hunger, not yet hunger, but a warning. And then, without realizing it, something changes. You no longer think of rescue. You think of surviving until tomorrow, then until night, then 1 more hour. The future shrinks. Reduced to the size of a sip of water you do not have. One of you is worse off. You see it without anyone saying it, breathing uneven, skin pale, barely speaking. When he does, his voice carries no weight. The sea has already claimed him in advance. There are no villains here, not yet. Just human bodies pushed to an edge few imagine from the shore. And here comes the uncomfortable contrast. While you are there, mouth dry, head burning, someone else sits comfortably, maybe on a sofa. Maybe scrolling their phone. Wi-Fi, cold water at arm's reach, food delivery with a tap. That version of you speaks with certainty. I would endure. I would never do that. I would never cross that line. Of course not. From here we are all strong. But in that boat, the sea does not negotiate. It does not care about principles. It only waits. And the longer it waits, the more it takes. First, it takes comfort. Then, clarity. Then, without permission, it enters a more dangerous place. How you decide, who matters and who does not. Still, nothing irreversible has happened. But once the sea pushes you here, no court, no law, no morality will easily pull you out. How long do you think you could last before the sea makes you reconsider what is right and what is necessary? Hunger does not arrive all at once. That's what most people don't understand. At first, it is almost polite, a soft reminder, a noise in your stomach that you can ignore. You tell yourself you've been hungry before. This is uncomfortable, yes, but manageable. You lie well, we all do. But as the days pass, hunger changes. It stops being a sensation and becomes a presence. It sits with you, watches you, waits. Your mouth is no longer just dry, it tastes bitter. Every imaginary sip of water makes you nauseous. The sun doesn't just burn your skin, it seems to pass through your bones. You start feeling cold at night, cold that makes no sense in the open ocean. Your body begins to spend what it has left. Conversations shorten, not because there is nothing to say, but because speaking costs too much, thinking costs too much, moving costs too much. Every gesture has a price. And then, something unsettling happens. You begin to look at the others differently, not with hatred, not with malice, with calculation, clumsy, almost unconscious. Who moves less, who breathes worse, who drinks less, who might not make it to tomorrow. You do not decide this. Your mind does. One of you deteriorates quickly, the youngest, the cabin boy. He drank seawater, a beginner's mistake or desperation. Now he deliriously talks to himself, sometimes asleep, sometimes barely alive. His body fades like a lamp running out of oil, and then hunger stops being just yours. It becomes collective. You do not speak it aloud, but everyone knows. If he dies, everything changes. It does not improve the situation, but it transforms it. His death ceases to be just a tragedy and starts to feel like a possibility. And that thought frightens you, not because it is monstrous, but because it begins to sound reasonable. Hunger has that talent. It makes the unthinkable seem logical. It makes the unacceptable seem inevitable. From the shore, it sounds terrible, and it is. But from the boat, there is no philosophy, no grand words. There is a body fading before your eyes and 3 others counting hours. Can you imagine enduring this and not starting to consider the unthinkable? And here comes the cruel contrast again. While you are there, watching a human being consume himself before your eyes, someone at home comments on social media, coffee in hand, saying, "That could never be justified." It is not hypocrisy, it is distance. On the boat, distance does not exist. Everything is too close, the pain, the smell, the breathing of another, the idea forming silently without being spoken. There is still no decision, no knife, no spilled blood, but hunger has already done its most important work. It has turned a person into time, and time into an enemy. How far do you think you could go before your mind starts calculating who survives and who doesn't? The sea has its own rules, and the men who sail it have invented a few more, just to feel like they control something. They cannot. In your head, the word tradition echoes. You've heard it before. At sea, custom allows it. When hope is gone, one does what must be done. Heavy words smelling of salt and old wood. They comfort you and unsettle you at the same time, because words are always easier than deeds. Ancient sailors did it. Captains did it. There are stories of men who survived by sacrificing another. Stories of heroism, yes, but also of decisions taken with the comfort of distance between life and death. Now you realize something crucial. The tradition of the sea is not justice. There is no judge to oversee it, no objective criteria, only experience, fear, and strength. The old ones did it because they could, because they had authority, because the weaker one was there, and because the life of the weak always seemed more expendable than the strong adult. Look at the cabin boy, look at the captain. The shadows in the boat tell the story. The tradition you thought was a safety net starts trembling beneath your feet. The same tradition that promised clarity now sounds like a trick, permission for the strong to decide over the weak disguised as survival. And here's the trap. Tradition does not ask if you have the right. It asks if you are capable. If you can, then it is allowed. If you cannot, then you are the victim. There is no absolute morality, no law, only the strength of those still breathing. While you think this, the boat rocks gently on an ocean without patience. Every wave is a reminder. Tradition may console, but it does not save. Tradition does not give water. Tradition does not shield you from the agony of your body, from the fear of the future, from the calculation now circling your mind. And again comes the cruel contrast. From your sofa, you could read this and shake your head. That is barbarism, you'd say, coffee in hand, central heating on. But here, there is no sofa, no heating, no coffee, just creaking wood, a burning sun, and hunger, making the unthinkable seem reasonable. Because tradition, no matter how old, no matter how respected, is not law. And when law is absent, ethics becomes a luxury you cannot afford. Can you see it? The silent lie told for centuries to those lost at sea. If you are strong and traditional, you have the right. If you are weak, you better prepare to disappear. The sea does not negotiate, but tradition seduces you into thinking it does. And that is the beginning of the trap. And then it happens. Not like an explosion, more like a weight slowly settling over everyone. Dudley looks, Stephens looks. The cabin boy is still there, breathing, barely, and suddenly the possibility stops being an abstract thought. It hardens, it becomes something that must be decided. And the one who decides is the captain, the adult, the strong one. You feel it in the air, dense, heavy with authority and fear. It's not hunger, not the storm, not even the sea. It's choice. Who dies? When they die, and why they die. And the worst part is the certainty, the inequality of power. The weak has no voice, the boy has no defense, the scale was never balanced, and it cannot be now. The cabin boy is no longer just a child in a boat. He becomes a measure of authority, proof of one man's right to decide. Dudley knows what this makes him, judge and executioner. There are no clean options. If no one acts, everyone dies. If he acts, he chooses who lives and who doesn't. The sea's tradition whispers in his ear. It tells him it's been done before, that others survived this way. But he knows it's a dangerous comfort. Because if he chooses, he doesn't just kill an innocent. He destroys the idea of justice itself. The air in the boat thickens. Every breath feels expensive. Stephen's eyes tell the same story. Fear, not of death alone, but of participation. There is no heroism here. No epic drama, just a simple, terrible human truth. One man holding absolute power over another. And you feel it now. The fear is no longer about everyone dying. It's about how one man decides who survives. And again, that uncomfortable contrast. While you sit there, mouth dry, heart racing, others sit far away, warm, comfortable, debating morality over coffee. I would never do that, they say. Of course not. From a sofa, we are all righteous. From the raft, we are all potential villains. Feel it. Choice is not just an action, it is power. Absolute responsibility. Fear turned into duty. There is still no knife, no skin cut, no blood spilled, but the decision has already been made. Not with steel, but in the soul of a man. And the sea, silent as ever, watches. Tell me, would you really be able to resist if survival depended on it? And suddenly, the raft touches land. No applause, no heroic relief, only sand under your feet and the cries of gulls mocking you. What was once an endless ocean is now a small harbour. Clocks tick, laws exist, time is human again and no longer a predator. And here you start to feel another weight, the weight of judgment. The air on solid ground is strange, almost suspicious. It smells of salt mixed with burning wood, tobacco, damp clothes. The men look around, uneasy. They know. They're about to be examined, because the court will not ask about thirst, the sun, the storm. It will ask about what you did when all that pressed down on you. The contrast is cruel. You spent days in a boat where every sip of water was a miracle, every shadow a threat. Now you face men in chairs, with papers, pens, air conditioning keeping them comfortable. Here they speak of rights, precedents, duties. Here there is no hunger, no thirst, only words as heavy as the deaths left behind. Fear changes shape. Before you feared the sea, now you fear the law. Before danger was tangible, now it is abstract, conceptual. The same act that saved your life, the same choice that seemed inevitable, is now subject to interpretation, scrutiny, power beyond your control. And here comes a cruelly human detail. Even though the court seems distant, its words take hold. Every question, every argument, every phrase from the judge makes clear what you already suspected. Survival is not enough. Taking a life, even from necessity, always leaves a mark larger than mere survival. And again, the bitter contrast. The sea, the raft, the endless hunger, they are gone. But you are still judged, and the law does not forget. Could a judge truly understand what it feels like to be in the middle of the ocean with nothing but salt water and your own body as witnesses? Because now that understanding, or the lack of it, will determine more than your freedom. It will define the boundaries of what any man may decide when survival is all that matters. The court did not debate hunger. That was already accepted as fact. Everyone knew Dudley and Stephens acted out of desperation. But the real question was not moral. It was about power. The question, stark in its simplicity: can necessity justify the intentional killing of an innocent when power is unequal? Look closely. It is not should they have done it, nor was it understandable. It is principle. Because if the answer were yes, the entire common law would collapse. The rules meant to protect the vulnerable would vanish. The strong would always decide. The exception would become the rule, and the rule would become abuse. The defense had hoped the court would accept a seductive yet deadly argument. Everyone was going to die. Parker was near death. His death would save the others. Maritime tradition allowed it. It is pure utilitarianism. Sacrifice one to save many. Cold calculation. But the court saw it coming and rejected it immediately. Because common law does not operate on calculations. It operates on absolute limits. The line that marks the judgment does not speak of the knife, nor the cannibalism. It speaks of choice. Dudley decides who dies, when they die, and why. And he does it from power. Captain, adult, strong, with family. Meanwhile, Parker is the cabin boy, younger, weaker, with no one to protect him. The court understood the danger. Allowing someone to decide another's life, even to survive, would open the door to preventive murder. Absolute power over the innocent can never be legitimized. And the law is brutally honest. To preserve one's life is generally speaking a duty, but it may be the plainest and highest duty to sacrifice it. Plainly put, living is not an absolute right. Killing can never be a right, not even to survive. Because if it were, the strong would always have an excuse. The weak would always be the candidate. The law would stop protecting the vulnerable. Now you understand. The judgment was not punishment for hunger. It was punishment for choice, for absolute power over an innocent. And that principle is more valuable than the life of any man on that raft. Could you ever judge the same act from a boat with the sea and hunger as witnesses? Necessity is powerful. We all know that. It pushes, it compels, it whispers that the impossible is possible. But the court understood something few ever grasp. Necessity can never become law. Dudley and Stephens' argument was tempting. Everyone was going to die. Parker was already fading. Wouldn't it be more humane to use his death to save the others? At first glance, it sounds like justice. It sounds like common sense. But here's the problem. The law does not work on common sense. It works on limits. Because the moment you accept that necessity justifies killing an innocent, you open a door that never closes. The strong will always have an excuse. The weak will always be the candidates. And the law meant to protect the vulnerable turns into a game of power. Survival belongs not to who deserves to live, but to who decides best. The court said it plainly. There is no objective way to decide who must die. Human instinct favors the powerful, not the just. The law cannot rely on people being good. If it did, it would be men's law, not justice. The ruling's key truth cuts deep. The law cannot measure human necessity without destroying itself. If hunger decides, if fear decides, if desperation decides, then the exception becomes the rule, and the rule becomes abuse. The judgment makes something painfully clear. The law protects the weak, even when it feels cruel, even when you're trapped in the hell of that boat. And logic screams otherwise. Because if everyone gets to choose who should die, there is no justice, only survival of the strongest. And that, my friend, is not civilization, it's natural selection. So tell me, if you were on that raft, would you resist the temptation to decide who lives and who dies, even knowing everyone might perish? The law spoke first, and it did not mince words. Dudley and Stephens were condemned. The sentence clear, firm, necessary. It was not punishment for hunger, not for fear. It was punishment for principle, for what their choice represented. Because the law is not a friend that understands tragedy. The law is a wall that separates the permitted from the forbidden, that shields from destruction and yet does not bend for desperation. In that wall, no matter how desperate you are, an innocent cannot be sacrificed. But the story has another layer. The Crown granted a pardon immediately, because the men acted under extremes, because no one could ignore the agony of the raft, because human tragedy deserves compassion even when justice demands firmness. Notice this, the condemnation was not for Dudley, it was for the future, for anyone who might one day stand at the edge between life and death, to set a limit that no hunger, no sea, no fear could erase. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Justice sets the rule and mercy acknowledges human tragedy, the punishment for principle, the pardon for man. Two truths coexisting, uncomfortable, necessary, human. The judgment teaches something most overlook. Surviving does not exempt you from the law. Taking a life, even from necessity, always leaves a mark far larger than survival itself. Could the pardon be cowardice, or the intelligence of those who understood that the law must protect principle, not the individual? And as you reflect, remember, the raft, the sea, the choice, all behind you. But the lesson remains, no circumstance makes an innocent expendable. The law spoke, and it spoke to remind us all who must be protected and who must never be used as a tool for survival. Imagine for a moment that the court had said yes, that necessity could justify killing an innocent, that the strong could decide who lives and who dies. The world changes in an instant, not just for Dudley and Stephens, but for everyone. Because then every act of extreme survival, every desperate choice would carry legal cover. The weak, always the candidates. The strong, always the judges. The exception becomes the rule, and the rule ceases to exist. From war to euthanasia, from shipwreck to natural disaster, every extreme act justifies murder out of necessity. The law stops protecting the vulnerable. Civilization ceases being civilization, only natural selection dressed as justice. And now you see it clearly. When someone says I would have done the same, the law replies coldly, firmly, precisely why I exist, to prevent your momentary humanity from deciding another person's life. to draw the line where instinct and hunger want to erase it. The lesson? Hard, almost painful. Surviving does not always mean being right. Justice is not the same as survival. The law protects the weak even when you, trapped in the inferno of the raft, feel logic dictates otherwise. Close your eyes. Feel the difference. A choice made from hunger might save your life, but a law that permits that choice destroys all the future lives it is meant to protect. Here, dear listener, the story of the raft ends, but the lesson begins. Limits exist, even when you hate them. The exception may be human, but it can never be legal. If you had been on that raft, could you have resisted letting survival justify taking another life? And remember, giving a like and subscribing is free. It ensures we continue diving into the darkest, most human corners of history together.